You've probably said this to yourself at some point. It's just how I am. Maybe you double-check things more than others. Maybe your mind loops on small details. Maybe you hold on to habits that don't quite make sense, but feel impossible to break. It all seems harmless, even familiar, almost like part of your identity. But here's the uncomfortable question. What if it's not? What if some of the things you've accepted as your personality are actually something else entirely? Not random, not meaningless, but signals. Quiet ones at first, easy to ignore, until they slowly become part of your daily life. There are people who go years without questioning these patterns, because from the inside, everything feels logical, natural, justified. You adapt. You adjust. You build your life around it, and over time, you stop noticing it altogether. But every now and then, there's a moment. A pause. A strange awareness that something doesn't feel completely right. Not enough to alarm you, just enough to make you wonder. And then you move on. You tell yourself it's nothing. You've always been like this. But have you? Or did something shape this version of you along the way? That's the part most people never stop to explore. Because it's easier to accept a label than to question it. Easier to call it personality than to ask where it came from. So before you dismiss this, just think for a second. If you've ever had a habit that feels small, but strangely powerful, like it runs in the background without your permission, then don't brush it off this time. If that thought has ever crossed your mind, even briefly, then you might want to keep listening. Most people don't question their habits, they explain them away. I'm just detail-oriented. I think too much. I like things a certain way. It sounds harmless, even productive. But there's a point where a habit quietly shifts from something you choose into something that starts choosing for you. And that shift is so subtle. Most people never notice it happening because on the surface, everything still looks normal. You're still functioning, still going through your day. But underneath, there's tension. A kind of invisible pressure that doesn't turn off. You don't do these things because you want to anymore. You do them because not doing them feels wrong, uncomfortable, sometimes even dangerous in a way you can't fully explain. There are people who check the same thing over and over again, not because they doubt themselves, but because their mind refuses to give them a sense of done. There are people who replay conversations in their head for hours, not to improve, but because they can't stop the loop. Others hold on to objects they don't need, fully aware they serve no purpose. Yet the idea of letting them go creates a deep, almost irrational discomfort. And then there are patterns that affect your body itself. Sleep that doesn't follow time. Energy that spikes and crashes without warning. Moments where your own thoughts don't feel entirely like yours. From the outside, all of this can be dismissed as personality. A little quirky. A little different. But from the inside, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like maintenance, constant quiet effort to keep things under control. And the hardest part is, no one else can see it. So you learn to hide it, to normalize it, to tell yourself, this is just who you are. But every now and then, there's a question that slips through. Why can't I stop this? Not because you haven't tried, but because something in your mind pushes back every time you do. And that question matters more than most people realize. Because the moment a behavior feels like something you have to obey, it's no longer just a habit. It's a signal. If any part of this feels uncomfortably familiar, don't ignore it this time. Just be honest with yourself, even for a second, and admit it. Your brain is not random. It doesn't create patterns for no reason. Every behavior you repeat, even the ones that confuse you, has a function. The problem is, that function isn't always obvious anymore, because your brain wasn't designed to make you feel comfortable. It was designed to keep you safe. And when it detects something it interprets as a threat, stress, uncertainty, emotional overload, it doesn't sit there and analyze it calmly. It reacts fast. It looks for control, for certainty, for anything that reduces the tension. And if it can't solve the problem directly, it builds a workaround. That's where these habits begin. What looks meaningless on the surface is often your brain trying to create stability underneath. Repetition becomes a way to feel in control. Certain thoughts become rules. Certain actions become requirements. Not because they truly protect you, but because your brain believes they do. Over time, those beliefs harden into patterns. And once a pattern is linked to safety, your system doesn't treat it like a choice anymore. It treats it like a necessity. That's why stopping feels so uncomfortable. Not just inconvenient, but wrong, even risky. Your mind creates a false connection. If I don't do this, something bad might happen. You may not fully believe it logically, but emotionally, it feels real enough to obey. And the more you follow that loop, the stronger it becomes. It's reinforcement. Your brain learns, this worked. We stayed safe. So it keeps running the same script again and again until one day, you're no longer deciding, you're just responding automatically. This is how control slowly flips direction. What started as a coping mechanism becomes something that controls you, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly. Sure, who say, in the background of your life. So instead of asking, why am I like this? Sure, who? Ask a better question. What is my brain trying to protect me from? And is that threat still real? Because if you're starting to see the pattern, that awareness changes everything. There's a man lying awake at 3 a.m., staring into the dark. His body is exhausted, but his mind won't slow down. Just hours ago, he felt full of energy, almost unstoppable. Now he can't even close his eyes. It's not a choice. It feels like something inside him refuses to let go. Somewhere else, a woman stands in her kitchen, holding an old, useless item. She knows it has no real value. She's thought about throwing it away many times. But every time she tries, something stops her. Because to her, it's not just an object. It holds a piece of her past. Letting it go feels like losing a part of herself. So she keeps it. Again. And again. Not because she wants to, but because she can't let go. On a quiet street, someone walks slowly, counting every single step. Not out of habit, not out of boredom, but because stopping feels wrong. There's this pressure, this invisible tension that builds the moment they try to ignore it. So they keep counting, just to feel okay. And in a crowded space, someone whispers under their breath. To others, it looks strange. But inside their mind, there's a conversation happening they didn't choose. They're not acting out. They're trying to keep up with something that feels real to them. Different people, different lives, but the same pattern underneath. From the outside, it looks unusual. From the inside, it feels necessary. So if it were you in one of these moments, would you stay silent or would you fight it? Here's the part most people don't want to hear. It's not just your personality. It never was. What you've been calling just how I am might actually be something your brain built under pressure and then never updated. Because your mind doesn't ask for permission. It learns fast, locks in patterns, and repeats them if they seem to work. At some point, Maybe during stress, fear, or uncertainty, your brain created a rule. Quote, "Do this to stay safe." And even if that moment passed, the rule stayed. That's why it feels so real, so convincing, because to your system, it is real. The threat may be gone, but the response is still active. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Every time you follow that pattern without questioning it, you reinforce it. You teach your brain, yes, this is necessary. So it keeps going, stronger, more automatic, until one day, you're not choosing anymore, you're just reacting, quietly, repeatedly. And from the outside, people still call it a personality trait. But deep down, you feel it. That subtle gap. That sense that something is off, but hard to explain. So now you're left with a choice. Not a dramatic one. Just a shift in awareness. You can keep calling it who you are and stay inside the pattern. Or you can pause and see it for what it might actually be, a survival system that never turned off. So ask yourself honestly, is this really you? Or is it something your mind learned to protect you? You don't need to fix everything at once. You don't need a complete reset, but you do need to stop ignoring what you already feel. Because awareness is where this begins. The moment you stop saying, "This is just who I am," and start asking, "Why does this happen?" something shifts. You create space between you and the pattern. And in that space, you're no longer just reacting. You're observing. That's where control slowly returns. Not through force, not through pressure, but through understanding. You start noticing what triggers it, when it shows up, what it makes you feel. And for the first time, instead of automatically following it, you pause. Even if it's just for a second. That second matters. Because change doesn't come from one big decision. It comes from small moments of awareness, repeated over time. Some people will keep living on autopilot because it's familiar, predictable, safe, even if it's exhausting. But others will choose to look deeper. And once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. So if you truly want something different, it starts here, not with words, with a decision. Quiet, personal, real. And if you're serious about that, then don't just think about it. Choose it. And start today.